The film begins on the island of Ithaca, where Queen Penelope awaits the return of her husband Odysseus from a business trip. 20 years ago, the king went to war to do various things: besiege Troy and annoy the Trojans. After 10 years of siege, the city fell, but another 10 years have passed since then, and the husband has not returned. Odysseus's son Telemachus had already grown up on the island, but had never seen his father. Even before birth, he leaves for Trojan bread. But the local aristocracy, suspecting that the crown lady got lost on the way from the war, is among the widowed queen, in their opinion, to marry and officially gain status and wealth. The grooms who settled in the royal castle and its environs behave extremely insolently. For several years now, they have been devouring food supplies and demanding that Penelope choose a husband, openly threatening Telemachus, the only legitimate heir, with murder. Only the authority of Antinous, one of the main contenders for the queen's hand, keeps the guests in check. The prince himself also asks his mother to make a choice, but she declares that she will marry only when she has finished weaving a funeral shroud for Laertes, his father-in-law, father of Odysseus and grandfather of Telemachus. That evening, Penelope secretly sorts out everything she managed to weave during the day in order to prolong the processes. Odysseus himself is thrown ashore during the battle. The king doesn't own a single article of clothing and doesn't have a single plausible explanation in his head for where he's been hanging out for the last 10 years. The emaciated man is identified by Eumaeus, a swineherd who remains loyal to the king he sent. However, Eumaeus does not recognize the old man as his master and simply drags him into his hut to help the stranger out of the kindness of his heart. In the morning, Eumaeus explains to the old man what is happening on the island. The king is gone, and a power vacuum has arisen, which local aristocrats are trying to fill. The queen is struggling to hold on to morale as supplies dwindle. It's a mess. No one even believes in the happy return of Odysseus, who will come and restore order. The self-proclaimed ruler, left alone, goes to his native land to kiss her. In the evening, Odysseus confesses to Eumaeus that he is a veteran of the Trojan War without mentioning her name. He tells how they built a wooden horse, hiding warriors inside. When the Trojans dragged the horse into the city walls, mistaking it for a parting gift from the retreating, besieging troops, the warriors break out of the wooden belly and carry out a bloody massacre of the sleeping defenders. And so he won. At dawn, the young prince boards a fishing boat to go in search of his father. Penelope learns that Telemachus has disappeared from the island in the blink of an eye and without a trace. Antinous puts pressure on the queen, reminding her that she is now left not only without a husband, but also without a son. Penelope begs him to bring the boy home, hinting all too clearly that if he succeeds, she will choose him as her husband. However, later the insidious groom discusses with other contenders for his hand and heart the option of killing the heir. They don't need him. In the afternoon, two of them go to Laertes to find out where Telemachus has gone. But the old man had already bought a ticket to Hades and died, so as not to make him wait for the funeral. When Penelope is informed about this, one of the suitors warns that all more or less decent suitors who have lost hope are leaving the island. What remains of the most rabid and arrogant scumbags? When Eumaeus breaks the news to his guest, Odysseus, remaining incognito, sneaks into his father's funeral. He finds contenders for the kingdom, led by Antinous, around the grieving Penelope, hinting that the time has come to choose one of them. Now the burial shroud excuse won't work. Then the queen deftly eludes him and says that she will now weave a wedding cape. Odysseus asks the swineherd to take him to the palace. He tries to dissuade the stranger, but the others will perceive the poor old man as an unwanted competitor and may even defeat him, but he does not bow. In the afternoon, they go to the castle, near which they meet the prototype of Hachiko, the hunting dog of Argus, who has been waiting for 20 years for the return of his master Odysseus. The king, in the form of a beggar, bends over his faithful dog. The pet discovers that the owner has returned, after which he dies of old age with a clear conscience. Eumaeus watches this scene, suspecting the obvious. He then takes the old man into a building where he gives him a begging bowl so he can finally disguise himself as a penniless veteran of the Trojan War. Odysseus, in his own house, asks the uninvited guest for a piece of food, but the insolent guests drive him away, mocking him and throwing food. When a guard is asked to take out a beggar and a tramp, someone comes up with the brilliant idea of making the old man fight the huge guard. There's nothing to do. Odysseus first gets rid of the bully so as not to prematurely reveal his excellent physical shape and combat training. Lying on the floor, he deftly grabs the guard's leg and he falls. Having reached the rung of the social ladder, the large man fell into the state of corpse. Surprised aristocrats allow the old beggar to stay. Odysseus sits on the steps to reflect on his destructive behavior. In the evening, when the suitors have gone to their tents, he remains alone in the hall, illuminated by the vague light of the fire. At this moment, Penelope enters the room. Having learned that the gardens of Troy are located near the veteran's house, she wants to ask him about her husband. The flickering light of the fire and the fact that the woman has not seen her husband for 20 years prevent her from recognizing him in the poor old man. Disappointed that she has not learned anything new, the queen retires to her chambers to unravel her wedding cloak. As she leaves, she tells the old maid Euryclea, Odysseus' nurse, to take care of the last guest. Euryclea, while washing a man's feet, notices a specific scar on his leg. Her student Odysseus had exactly the same thing. Nanny, the first and only person she meets, recognizes the returning king in the strangers. She tries to share the good news with Penelope, but Odysseus orders him to keep her return a secret. During the day, while Queen Cognito visits her father's grave in the crypt, Telemachus returns to the island. He tells his mother that the bandits were waiting for them on the coast of Ithaca and wanted to kill him, apparently on the orders of one of the suitors, but everything worked out when they landed in another place. He also claims to have found traces of his father, claiming that someone said he had another woman on the mainland with whom he has lived happily ever since. The son advises his mother to forget his father and live his own life. In response, she advises him to hide with Eumaeus before the suitors kill him. Conversation is interrupted by the appearance of Antinous. When Telemachus leaves, he makes it clear that Penelope must choose him so as not to worsen the already unstable political situation on a particular island. At the pig farm, Eumaeus, seeing Odysseus leaving the house, admits that he recognized him as the king. The swineherd shames the ruler for inaction, saying that something needs to be done. The motherland is in danger. Telemachus appears next to him to hide from potential assassins. Antinous convinces the other suitors to finish what they started. Gathering strength, they organize a pogrom on the island, smash the boat on which the prince was sailing, torture and kill the fishermen steering the ship. They then walk around the island with dogs to find the rightful heir and get rid of him. Telemachus is interrogating an old man busy repairing the roof after Rhine's war when two suitors appear. Odysseus carefully kills his son to hide him, and he himself goes out to meet the guests with a club. A misunderstanding arises between them, which immediately leads to bloodshed. The veteran stabbed to death two impudent young men with experience. When the awakened Telemachus asks the old man who he is, he quotes Darth Vader. "I am your father." Realizing that the other suitors will make a fuss over the murder, Eumaeus orders his assistant to hide the bodies, and he, along with his son Odysseus and the prince, runs deep into the island. They come to a waterfall on the mountain where the river begins and swim to the rocks on the other side to catch the smell of the flowing water. There they climb even higher up the rocks. Groups of suitors with hunting dogs search the pig farm for Telemachus, killing the assistant along the way. In the evening, in the gorge, Telemachus accuses his father of abandoning him, his mother and his home to the mercy of fate. In response, the father reminds him that in his absence his son should have taken care of safety and order, which he did not do. Busy with mutual accusations, they don't even realize that Antinous, having figured out Penelope's trick with the wedding cloak, gave her an ultimatum. Tomorrow she will choose a husband for herself, whether she wants it or not. In the morning, Penelope's maid comes to Telemachus's hideout and reports that her mother is organizing a mother's festival in the evening to choose a new king. To do this, 12 axes are driven into the hall in a row to make an even tunnel out of their holes. Realizing that there is no time to come up with a cunning plan in the spirit of Ocean's 11, the men decide to act according to the circumstances and conquer everyone with their charisma and improvisation. When guests gather in the house, Telemachus brazenly returns there. Even hardened thugs do not dare to kill him in front of his mother. Then an old beggar in rags appears. They want to kick him out, but the prince, as the owner of the house, orders him to be left in his rooms. Penelope then explains the terms of the competition. To choose a future husband, candidates must repeat the TSG Entertainment movie studio's intro, namely, take their husband Odysseus by the ear, pull a rope and shoot an arrow straight through 12 holes in the wasps. The queen takes the equipment out of the box, and the event begins. The candidates, one after another, try to put a boutonniere on Luke's shoulder thread, but it doesn't work out at all, like Zeus and Celibate. After all the physically strong and powerful boys failed, Antinous took on this job. Realizing that he has a harder time pulling the strings than the queen, and that his chances are even slimmer, he does not trust the bride. For example, she came up with an impossible task to avoid getting married again. When Telemachus intends to try to pull the string to clearly prove that this task is feasible, Antinous refuses, proposing to vote to appoint the queen's groom. At this moment, Odysseus, pretending to be an old beggar, asks the hostess for permission to participate. Recognizing Penelope's husband, he orders Telemachus to give the bow to his father. Taking up the weapon, Brodiga sheds his rags and raises a silent question among those gathered as to who this mighty old man is. Having warmed the shoulders of the bow under the fire, Odysseus deftly bends it, then slips it under his leg in order to bend it further and throw a loop from the bowstring in front of the stunned young suitors. Once she finishes assembling, the nanny hands the student a quiver of arrows. Having placed one, Odysseus shoots 12 holes with it with a well-aimed shot. However, the grooms ask him to leave the wedding on good terms. Not finding mutual understanding, Odysseus lowers his quiver, then confronts those gathered with a fait accompli. Rumors of his death turned out to be greatly exaggerated, but their death was much closer than they thought. The returning king of Ithaca, without remorse, shoots with arrows the arrogant and shameless guests who were courting his wife. Antino, realizing that the end is inevitable, looks at what is happening with Olympian calm. When the ammunition runs out, the brave surviving suitors rush into hand-to-hand combat. But here, too, Odysseus represents the royal power, disarming the attackers and killing them with their own weapons. When Odysseus and Telemachus, covered in blood, finish, Penelope appears in the hall. Of all the contenders, only the calm, seated Antinous survived. He declares that he will never insult the queen, and then humbly bows his head to the prince. Although the mother begs her son to spare Antinous, he delivers the decisive blow, which disappoints her. Soon after this, Telemachus decides to leave his native island to see the world and find himself. Shedding tears for him, the queen sends her son on a journey, although she later accuses her returning husband of taking the child away from her. Odysseus admits that he did terrible things during the war and did not return because he was ashamed. Noticing that there was only one bed in Penelope's room, the king knocked over the loom that she had been putting aside for a long time. Behind the car, you can see a gate leading to the stairs to the bedroom with a bed. The mistress ordered her to be locked up on the day her husband went to war, so that they would not share a bed with anyone. Having waited for him, she promises to love her husband, as before, no matter what. A lonely sail is visible on the sunset horizon of the endless sea. This Telemachus goes on his own adventure. This is where the film ends.